Well, hey everyone, welcome back, and I hope you enjoyed the dialogue with the ministers. We've got the Bearpit coming up next. Speaking of bears, I think I shared this with you last year, but my grandpa, Lynn Hooper, was actually eaten by a bear, killed by a bear, and that's not a joke. I'm telling the truth. It was September long weekend, 1959, and he was on a fishing trip south of Hinton, Alberta, in an area that we know as the Catamount, down on the Forestry Trunk Road there. And he and his buddy were back in there fishing, and he got attacked and killed by a bear. So I grew up in a very bear-aware family. So every time I hear the word bear, I got like high alert, red flags go off, and that's why Bearpit makes me a little bit anxious. I grew up in a bear-aware family. My dad used to teach us when we were young all kinds of things about bear safety and bear awareness. First of all, you need to be very bear aware when you're in the forest. And he taught me as a young man that if you ever get attacked by a black bear, you're supposed to fight back. That's what they say. If you get attacked by a grizzly bear, you're supposed to lay down and just play dead. I asked my father one time, I said, Dad, what about a cougar attack? How do you prevent a cougar attack? And he said, well, stop buying her drinks. Anyway, we have an interesting message right now, a good message from our friends at SaskPower. Let's take a look at that.
Well, SaskPower, like all other electricity companies and other energy companies for that matter across North America, are experiencing profound change. First of all, we have technology change. So we have the introduction of renewables in a much larger scale over the past 5 to 10 years than we ever saw before. We're seeing the introduction of battery technologies, which may be of use at some point in the future. We're seeing the introduction of potentially small modular reactor technologies, which could help us even further down the road. The other thing that's happening is the market conditions for alternatives are starting to come down, which makes our conventional choices maybe less optimum today than they might otherwise be. There's a number of things we have to look at. We have to look at the load growth in the province overall and the timing of when we need these supply additions to our grid in order to make sure that we have electricity 24/7, 365 days. That means we have to look at the load growth in every customer class in the province. We have to look at how the population is growing, what industries are coming in and out of Saskatchewan. And all of that together will tell us when we need to be planning for that next increase in our supply option. As we look at engaging communities around the province for future generation projects or other infrastructure projects as well, we'll also be engaging our First Nations communities in Saskatchewan. There are over 70 First Nations communities. Many of the First Nations communities we already engage with on a regular basis. Our Chinook Power Station, for example, on the land of the Niikinit in southwestern Saskatchewan. And again, the Niikinit First Nation has been involved and will be involved in the Moose Jaw generating plant, now known as the Great Plains Power Station. Ultimately, if we can provide an affordable, cost-effective form of generation, it helps keep rates low for everybody in the province. And that's fundamentally important for SaskPower. As we all know, the federal government regulations on conventional coal mean that we have to be out of conventional coal by the end of 2029. As we look at using carbon capture and storage technology on a facility like that, we now have to compare it with other alternatives that we do have available, like natural gas generation and the potential for perhaps hydro imports, and look at that very carefully. The economic value of this type of technology needs to be compared to the next best alternative. And the other thing we have to remember, it doesn't capture 100% of the CO2, so we'll always be paying some carbon tax on emissions that do come from that facility. The net metering program, such as it was changed in the fall of 2019. And, since that time, we're happy to report we've had 178 applications come in, which really corresponds to the year previous, before the number of applications really soared as a result of the subsidies that were in place and additional federal subsidies that happened in the year 2019. The program is sustainable. We are going to have this program in place for quite some time. It allows access for people that do want to put solar on their roof or on their business. Our plan around conventional coal in Saskatchewan today really fits with the mandate from the federal government to phase out conventional coal by the end of 2029. As we look at the retirement dates for many of the coal units that we have in southern Saskatchewan, we have staged the retirement of some of these facilities in order to get maximum production out of the remaining life of them. SaskPower has had deep ties with Estevan since the late 1950s and with Coronac since the 1970s. We'll continue to work with these communities as the regulations begin to materialize and decisions are made for those units in those particular communities in southern Saskatchewan.
Well, a great message from SaskPower, and we really want to thank them for their support of our Municipalities of Saskatchewan 2021 virtual convention and trade show. Hope you all enjoyed the marketplace. Don't forget, you'll be able to still connect with the marketplace, I think, for about 30 days later. I'll get some information for you on that a little later, but I think they're going to have that. You'll be able to connect with the exhibitors live from noon today until 2 p.m., and then I think they're going to keep all of that up at some level until the end of March, but I'll clarify that for you. We have a few minutes to fill here as we get ready for the Bearpit, and I thought maybe I would sing a song for you. And this is a very special song that I wrote years ago for my father, and that's where the inspiration came from for this tune. I was born in Edmonton. I was raised on a cattle ranch in a little town called Tomahawk, Alberta, just about an hour and a half southwest of Edmonton here. And I was 15 years old when I got the inspiration for this song. It took a lot of years to finally sit down and write it and record it, which I did a long time ago, back in 1995. And it was actually the last hit that I had, 1995. So am I washed up? Not in my mind, no. In my mind, I'm just in between hits right now. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this song, and I'd like to dedicate this especially to all of you who have rural roots, and that's a lot of people I know in Saskatchewan and also here in Alberta. And especially, I'd like to dedicate it to anybody that still makes their living on the land, our farm and ranch families. I think they're the most important people that we have here in our country, and I say that because they're the ones that keep us fed. So I hope you enjoy this song. It's called the John Deere Tractor Keys. I was barely 10 years old when he got up from the table. Said, son, I've got to head on into town. But they say it's gonna rain. There's still 100 bushels of seed that has to get into the ground. And I said, Dad, there comes a time when a young boy has to grow. I'm here to help you if you're in a squeeze. And I saw him wink at Mama. Tears filled up her eyes as he handed me the John Deere tractor keys. And I went up and down those fields at least a million times till thoughts of greener pastures started rolling through my mind. I started dreaming of the day I'd up and walk away from those John Deere tractor keys. Well, I was 17 years old when I got up from the table. Said, Dad, I want to head off into town. There ain't no future for me here. I better go while I'm still able. It's time for me to go and break new ground. And I said, Dad, there comes a time when a young man has to grow. But I'll be here to help you if you're in a squeeze. Well, he just sat and stared at Mama. Now tears rolled down her cheeks as I handed him the John Deere tractor keys. 'Cause I'd been up and down those fields at least a million times. Now thoughts of greener pastures were rolling through my mind, and I'd been dreaming of this day I'd up and walk away from those John Deere tractor keys. But now the world goes racing by. I'm 14 stories high. The last some concrete far as I can see. I want to go back home, but the folks who farm are gone. But I'd give to have those John Deere tractor keys. I still go up and down those fields at least a million times. Memories of greener pastures rolling through my mind, and I still regret the day I ever walked away from those John Deere tractor keys. Well, I hope you enjoyed that song, John Deere Tractor Keys. If you do like it, you can get my music on Apple Music or Spotify or wherever you find music. Just check out Danny Hooper. Tell him Danny Hooper sent you. Our whole family loves our water. All right. We're getting ready for our bear pit here. Time to just check in and see how everybody's doing. They're getting set up right now over at the wherever the bear pit is going to be. It's not, I don't know. It's not at my place. I know that. It's just somewhere out there in outer space, like this whole convention has been. It's all on the internet. It's virtual. It's a virtual bear pit. So if you're going to have a virtual bear pit, where would you have it? You'd have it in a virtual facility. And they're over there right now in the hotel. I just got a message on chat. They are in the hotel. We don't know which hotel, but they're in a hotel. We've got time right now for a quick message from our friends at Fireball. Now, this is a very cool company, and they make equipment if you're concerned about COVID sanitization, and who isn't in these troubled times, these crazy pandemic times that we're in. But they specialize in equipment for sanitizing and doing COVID spraying and stuff like that. So let's take a minute here, and we'll hear a message or watch a message from our good friends at Fireball.
The worldwide emergence of COVID-19 has rapidly created the need for higher productivity on all disinfecting jobs. Introducing the new SaniSpray HP Airless Sprayers by Graco, the only airless sprayers specifically designed to work with disinfectants, sanitizers, and deodorizers. Simply put, SaniSpray HP sprayers are the fastest disinfecting application method available today, increasing your efficiency and reducing operator fatigue on every job.
That's it. That's Fireball. Alrighty, great equipment, great company. And to keep in mind, if COVID sanitization is a priority in your community, which I know it is, and if it's not, it sure should be. I can't wait till this crazy virus thing is out of the way. We're still waiting for them to get connected over at the hotel for our annual bear pit. I was going to call it Fire Pit, but it's the Bear Pit. That's coming up. And just take a quick look at my notes, make sure I haven't overlooked anything. The trade show, I just want to mention that. I've been asked to remind the delegates you will be able to browse the trade show booths, view the on-demand sessions, and watch or rewatch recordings of the live sessions. That's very cool. For the next 30 days on the platform right here. So we've got time, still waiting for word from them. They still haven't connected over to the hotel, so I have time to tell you a story, true story. Elderly couple. We're celebrating their anniversary, and I don't know what anniversary, let's call it their 60th. It was a long anniversary. And while they want to go someplace special, they went to the Holy Land to celebrate their anniversary. And while they were over there, very sad story, the husband, rest his soul, he passed away. And the wife was distraught, and the people over there in the Holy Land, they said, well, we can bury your husband right here in the Holy Land, and that will cost $500, or we can send him back to Canada, and you can have the service there, but that will cost $5,000. And pardon me, it wasn't the husband, it was the wife that passed away. Get your story straight, Danny. Oh, geez, it's been a little while since I told this one. The wife passed away, so the husband, he's distraught. So the funeral director says we can bury her here for $500 or send her back to Canada, $5,000. The husband said, well, I'll have her buried here in the Holy Land. And the funeral director said, well, sir, you don't understand, I don't think. We can do it right here. She can be buried in the Holy Land, $500. It's going to cost $5,000 to send her back to Canada, because the gentleman was elderly, wanted to make sure that he understood. The old boy said, no, I want her buried here. And the funeral director said, well, can you explain why? And he said, well, because Jesus was buried here, and after 3 days he rose from the dead. He said, I can't afford to take that chance. Is that funny? I don't know if you're laughing. Okay, maybe another song. Yeah, let's do that. Here's one that I just recorded a new album. It came out about 2 days before the pandemic shut everything down. The album is called Forgiven, but I wrote all the songs on the album, and here's one that I wrote that you might enjoy. I don't know if you don't enjoy it. I have no way really of knowing because I can't see it right now. But anyway, well, I've been up and I've been down, and I've been looking all around, trying to find a reason to stay. Give it all I got, but now believe it or not, there's only one thing that I want to say. I'll get along, I'll get along, I'll get along, I'll get along without you. I'll get along, I'll get along, I'll get along, I'll get along without you. Ooh, well, the river's gotta flow, and the snow's gotta snow, and the wind's gotta blow, they say. You've been holding me down, I ain't hanging around, but I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll get along, I'll get along, I'll get along, I'll get along without you. I'll get along, I'll get along, I'll get along, I'll get along without you. Well, I was like a tall tree leaning in the wind, trying to grow down to my roots. You were like a lumberjack swinging your axe, trying to cut me down. I get along, I'll get along, I'll get along, I'll get along without you. I get along, I'll get along, I'll get along, I'll get along without you. I get along, I'll get along without you. Bye-bye. Well, we're ready for the Bearpit. Enjoy it. And to moderate the Bearpit for us this morning is Lori Bresciani, Municipalities of Saskatchewan Director and Councillor for the City of Regina. Lori, we'll turn things over to you. Have a good Bearpit. I'll be back right as soon as they're done. Things over to you. Have a good Bearpit. I'll be back right as soon as they're done. Things over to you. Have a good Bearpit. I'll be back right as soon as they're done. Things over to you. Have a good Bearpit.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Danny, for that introduction. Good morning. My name is Lori Bresciani, and I am the Municipalities of Saskatchewan Director and Councillor for the City of Regina. As we begin our session today, I would like to acknowledge that in Saskatchewan, we are on treaty land. As I address you from Regina, I acknowledge that I am on Treaty 4 territory and the homeland of the Métis. I encourage you to take a moment to acknowledge the treaty land on which you are situated. It is my honor today to be your moderator for this morning's session. Please note that it is going to be recorded. As with many things, the Bearpit looks a little different this year. It's a little bare in here, a lot less noise, I'll just say that. But as we move, we know that we had to be virtual this year, and we move forward next year to all gather together. I want to acknowledge that we probably have over 900 people listening in today, virtually across the. I'm proud to say that here today to listen in, to ask questions to our cabinet. We've asked you to submit your questions and written questions in advance, and we will pose those questions today to receive to the provincial cabinet. And it's important to note that while we received your questions in advance, we did not share the questions with cabinet, and it'll be the first time that they are hearing these questions. I would like to take this time to welcome Premier Moe and his cabinet today that have come here as we all social distance in this room. But thank you for taking the time to be here in this -40 morning to answer and have a conversation, answer questions from many, many people across this province. I would like to introduce the Honourable Scott Moe, Premier of Saskatchewan, the Honourable Donna Harpower, the Honourable Warren Kading, the Honourable Laurie Carr, the Honourable Fred Bradshaw, and the Honourable Jim Ryder, the Honourable Dustin Duncan, the Honourable Jean Makowski, the Honourable Don Morgan, and the Honourable Don McMorris. the Honourable Paul Merriman, the Honourable Gordon Wyatt, the Honourable Everett Hindley, the Honourable Christine Tell, and the Honourable Jeremy Harrison. Unfortunately, the Honourable Laura Ross, Honourable David Merritt, and Honourable Bronwyn Eyre was unable to join us today. But we'd like to move forward, and we thank you for being here with us. I would ask Premier Moe if he would like to start with opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Laurie, and thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. I'll maybe just begin by congratulating Roger on his election to president, and also thanking Dr. Barnhart for his service over the course of the past 4 years to your organization and to people in urban communities across the province. It's greatly appreciated. Take a moment to thank each of you that have joined us today, and through you, your colleagues on councils across Saskatchewan for what you do each and every day, and your service to the people that you represent in your community right across Saskatchewan. And I would thank you all for today, for putting on this Bearpit. This Bearpit is, I say this often, well, every year, this Bearpit is a real opportunity for your cabinet, your provincial cabinet in Saskatchewan, to really pull back the curtain and have a peek into what's happening on main streets in community after community across the province. In a short hour and a half, we have great insight into what is on the minds of our local Main Street ground level representatives across Saskatchewan, and for that we greatly appreciate this time. It's informative for us. I hope it's informative for you as we find our way through the next hour and a half. We'll endeavor, of course, to answer any questions that you have, and if we aren't able to provide those answers, we most certainly, we know how to get a hold of one another. We most certainly will follow up post the Bearpit here today. As Laurie said, it looks very different. We don't have the opportunity to be looking out to each of you in person. We're doing that virtually here today. We're spread out here as our cabinet within the room will come up to the microphones upon a question being answered relevant to their ministry. But there is one thing that is the same, and I do venture that next year we'll likely get name tags for the ministers, as we often joke that Fred Bradshaw and Warren Kading look alike. And when you put a mask on both of them, you can hardly tell them apart. So I would appreciate if you two will decipher and answer your own questions and not jump in on one another's, but I'll leave that up to you. But I thank you very much for joining us here today. I'll just say to ministers, keep your masks on. When you do come to the microphone and address, if you do want to remove it to speak, feel free, and then put it back on as you return to your seat. So thank you, Laurie.
Thank you, Premier Moe. So we will move into questions. Please note that some of the questions have been edited to ensure that they are no more than 1 minute long. So our first question is a video question from Mayor Gerald Albers from the City of Lloydminster.
Mayor Gerald Albers, City of Lloydminster. Premier Moe and members of the Cabinet, thank you for joining us today. Recent announcement that Saskatchewan Junior Hockey is receiving financial support from the Government of Saskatchewan has been appreciated by residents throughout the province. On the other side, our agricultural exhibition associations in many communities have seen their income greatly reduced to basically zero since March 17th, 2020. Can you provide assurances that financial support will be offered to these fine organizations and associations that will allow them to continue to support agricultural fairs and shows, supporting the agricultural industry, for non-profit and youth organizations like 4-H and their achievement days and regional gatherings, hosting Canada Day, Heritage Day, and numerous other community events that support a large demographic population far and wide across this entire province.
Jeremy Harrison, our Minister of Trade and Export, to answer that.
Sure. Thanks very much, Premier, and thank you very much, Mayor, for your question, and thank you for the observation as well with regard to junior hockey. We worked very closely with the SJHL and with the WHL in being able to move forward with a support package such that those teams and leagues were going to be able to survive and hopefully, in the case of the WHL, move forward with some play this year. There's still work ongoing on that front. With regard to the particular question with respect to the agribusiness I've appreciated the chance to talk directly with them on a number of past occasions. We did move forward with a tourism sector support program, a very significant program this summer, $50 million program, of which associations are able to make application. And I can say as well, there continue to be consideration and discussions with regard to further supports as we move forward. We're not in a position to announce anything here at this point, but those discussions and considerations are underway.
Thank you very much. So moving to our second question, comes from the town of Biggar. Biggar's Town Council strongly feels that the SGI Auto Body Shop accreditation change does not align with the government's stance of supporting small business across the province. This change will force our local residents to travel to major city centres for auto body repairs, and those residents will likely frequent the big box stores in those urban centres rather than shopping at their local grocery stores, pharmacies, hardware stores, etc. How did this change help rural businesses? And is there an opportunity to explore different accreditation categories for auto body shops?
Ask Don Morgan, the Minister of SGI, Minister of our Crown Utilities.
Thanks very much. I'll give you a bit of background on this. At the present time, there are 255 auto repair shops in the province. 44 of the facilities have not yet met the new accreditation requirements. The accreditation requirements are things that have been mandated by manufacturers and the things that are necessary to ensure that the vehicles continue to be safe. Of that 44, they represent just 3.5% of the total repairs. They're in usually often communities where there are other ones. 17 are in communities where there are alternative facilities. 16 of them are in communities where they've access within 50 kilometers. We think it's important. We've given a lot of opportunity and a lot of time to try and work through to try and develop either alternatives or whatever. And at the present time, the cost to become accredited for new equipment is $65,000. SGI has agreed to provide up to $15,000, so the difference is $40,000. So there's a small that are still left deciding what they want to do in the long run. Right now, we've got the highest repair rate in Canada, so we're trying to make sure that we're able to have all of those businesses stay viable. We understand that they're often the backbone in a small community, that they do employ a number of people. They give services to people there, and we want to be able to continue to do that. The original mandate date for everything coming into place was March 1, and we've asked them to extend it until July 1 so that they can continue to work with the businesses as they get brought up to speed. And we want to do everything we can to try and ensure that those businesses have every opportunity to be brought up to speed, while at the same time maintaining OEM specifications with the manufacturers and having the best qualifications and best quality work that can be done. They do great work and want to see that we're able to continue to support them. So thank you.
I would just quickly add to that, this is a good question, and one that Minister Morgan and other MLAs and ministers are very well aware of. And the challenge is as we progress, and there's a number of additional types of vehicles with very different build methods and very intricate built vehicles that are being built now, some of them now electric. The challenge of having the right equipment to fix all of the array of vehicles in our body shops becomes an increasing challenge for, yes, our small businesses across Saskatchewan. So this is a discussion that we've been having for a few years now and are going to have to continue to have. And the question is well taken with respect to how do we find a way to, yes, ensure that our auto body shops are fixing vehicles to the standards that they need to meet. But yes, how are we also supporting our small businesses and communities across Saskatchewan? So thank you for that question.
Thank you very much. So the next question comes from Michelle Jensen, councillor from Town of Redverse. If we can play the video, please.
Hi, my name is Michelle Jensen, and I recently joined Town Council in Redverse, Saskatchewan. And I'm a first-time councillor. So my question to you is, what have you learned through the years that is the best piece of advice you could give to new councillors? what kind of expertise could you impart on us that would help us in our first term and our continuing terms? Thanks.
I would just begin that, and I would ask Don Morgan and Donna Harpower maybe to grab a microphone on each side, as they are represent the longest-serving ministers in the nation of Canada, as they've been serving concurrently right since we formed government in 2007, and I know they would have a lot to add to this. My point would be relationships with council members, with the people you represent, with the provincial government, and the personal relationships that you can form. The quicker you form those relationships, you will find those helpful throughout your time of service. And let me just say to you and all other first-time council members across this province, thank you so very much for putting your name forward to serve your community. But Donna, if you'd like to start, the longest-serving female cabinet minister in Canada, and then Don Morgan would be the longest-serving male cabinet minister in Canada.
So thank you. My advice would be to be well aware of the fact that you don't even know what you don't know. It's a learning curve from start to finish. Always be willing to listen to your ratepayers that you are representing, and even if they don't disagree with you, you have to open your mind to the possibility that you don't know all of the different sides to an issue, and you quite often learn more from those that you may not necessarily agree with than you do from those that just think the same way you do. So it's exciting. Take it as a learning curve, take it as a challenge, and just have a little fun with it too, though. It can't... I work very hard at what I do, but I enjoy it as well.
Thanks very much. A really good question. The advice I'd give you is go out and stand in the longest line at the grocery store or wherever you go to, and make sure that people know that you're there, that you're accessible and easy to talk to. The biggest mistake I think that new politicians will make is that they'll think they've got to explain everything and that they're in campaign mode all the time. I think the best times for a new politician or any politician are the times that you spend listening, the times you go to Coffee Row and you may ask a couple of questions, but you're listening to what your stakeholders got to say, whether they're a neighbor, a voter, or whether it's another councillor, a city manager, or a politician from another level of government. But I think the more listening you can do and the more digesting that you can do on what people have got to say, the better off you're able to make long-term decisions.
Don McMorris as well would have a little bit to add on this.
Yeah, thank you, Premier. What I'd also suggest is through the Government Relations Ministry, they've started a program called the Peer Support Program, which brings senior elected councillors that have been elected for quite a while, as well as administrators, to help newly elected councillors and newly appointed administrators. First months and years of public service, or also newly elected and newly with people that have been there for a number of years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So our next question is on the airport. So airports are an essential tool for business and tourism in our province. Municipalities are very concerned about the possibility of losing the control tower in Regina and the resulting loss of jobs and service levels for one of our major airports. We have also heard that NAVCAN may be reducing services in other Saskatchewan airports. What action will the government of Saskatchewan be taking to ensure these changes do not happen?
I'll ask Fred to just make a few comments on airports, municipal airports in general across the province, and then maybe I will make a few comments with respect specific to the Regina situation on the Air Traffic Control Centre.
Yes, we have put lots of money into the regional airports within the province where they are not operated by the federal government, and this is something that's very important to all of our rural communities. We're investing. Excuse me, I lost my chunk of paper here. We're investing into the airports This year we've increased the amount that we're doing. I believe it's 15 airports within the province. And what we were going to do is help out those airports. It's a 50-50 partnership with the different communities to be able to move those airports and put them up into a better stead. Also, for the northern airports, we have a flow-through money coming from the federal government of $4.2 million coming out within the next 2 years to help out West Wind Aviation to be able to go into those airports and help out our northern partners. So this is airports. And did you want me to continue on with the airport in Regina, or?
A few comments on that, and then I have a few as well.
Yeah, certainly. The airports, I have talked to the federal minister on the fact of trying to take the tower out of the airport in Regina. I believe it's very detrimental. We would be the only capital city that did not have a tower in it. And what really is disappointing is they handed out layoff slips while they said that they were going to review it. I completely disagree with this, and I talked to the federal minister and asked him to hold off on from doing that, because the federal government can do that. They have 2 members on the NAV Canada board. All the federal government has to do is help out NAV Canada. Now, NAV Canada is under constraints because of COVID also, but all the federal government has to do is say, we can give you a bit of money to keep you going through there. We do not want to lose this tower in Regina. When this pandemic ends, and it will, Saskatchewan is posed to become one of, I believe, the best province to get through this, ahead of any other province. We have the products that everybody in the world needs. We have agriculture, we have potash, we have uranium, and we even have oil. The world beating a path to our door, and we're going to have that airport open to all kinds of air traffic. So that's my explanation to the federal minister. Something we should more in that.
Thank you very much, Minister, and I agree. During a COVID pandemic is absolutely no time for Navigation Canada, NAV Canada, or the federal minister to be reducing services at any airport, whether it be in Whitehorse, Yukon, Fort McMurray, Regina, Windsor. I think there's 7 of them that are slated to be reviewed in this NAV Canada review. This is not the time to be removing services at our airports. Our airline industry is under enough pressure, whether it be regional airlines servicing northern Saskatchewan and northern parts of our nation, as Minister Bradshaw had referenced, or whether it be in Saskatchewan, our 2 major airports in Regina and Saskatoon, which are our levers out of this province for business and for enjoyment in non-COVID times. And the Regina Airport, I would say, doesn't serve just the people of Regina. It serves a much broader population across the southern portion of this province. So credit to Mayor Sandra Masters, who had raised this with the minister and raised this with myself as well. I believe she has been in touch with the other mayors of the other impacted airports. The minister has been in touch with the federal minister, and I myself have been in touch now at the mayor's urging with other premiers in impacted provinces, and we'll be reaching out to the Prime Minister as well in very short order to ensure that our voices are heard, not just here in Regina, but the collective voices of the communities and the provinces and territory of all 7 of these facilities is heard at the highest levels of the federal government. This is absolutely no time for the federal minister to consider a change, a reduction in services such as this. It greatly would impact not only people's personal enjoyment in the future, but would greatly impact and impede the economic recovery that we already are turning our eyes to as what would hopefully be an exit from this COVID fog that we've been in for 11 months now, hopefully over the course of the next few months. So thank you, Fred, for your work on this file. Thank you to Mayor Masters for your outreach to the other mayors across the nation and your outreach to the provincial government.
Thank you very much. Yes, the airport is vitally important to our province. So the next question comes from Darcy Scott, Mayor Town of Etonia. When is the government going to have grants available for towns to repave our streets? So from the town of Etonia, it's available for towns to repave our streets.
Through basic programs as well as some other urban connector programs that we have for highways as well.
Yeah, so there are definitely a couple programs, and I think if you heard the Premier's address to start the convention on, boy, was that Monday, I guess, already, where we've doubled the amount of funding for streets that are really highways that go through communities, which there are a number of examples of that. It's called the Urban Highway Connector Program, and so we've been able to double the money, so that helps in some of those. The other area would be the ISIP program, which is for infrastructure. It is a 10-year program that runs to the year 2028, and there's an application base for that. We've had a COVID stream, which we're going to get out. We've into the future over the please. Thank you.
Comment on the Urban Highway Connector Program?
Yes, if you wonder why I catches on my hearing aids, so every time I try to take my mask off, my hearing aids go flying away. But anyway, yes, we have enhanced the Urban Connector Highway Program. There is quite a bit more money this year. There is $7.2 million being put into the Urban Highway Connector Program that will help enhance that. And plus, I will say that on the other end of our highways end of it, this year's budget is $648 million, and with another $300 million in stimulus to be added on within the next 2 years. So we are hoping to really improve the highways around this province and the Urban Connector Program. And what we're doing is asking people to apply for the Urban Connector Program. So thank you on that.
So our next question comes from Denise Komenetsky. She is a councillor, town of Aberdeen. In October of 2020, there were already over 3,000 overdoses in Saskatchewan, alarming a new health crisis. 1 in 3 residents live in a rural or remote location. Suicide rates are 4 times higher for young people in these locations. 10 to 20% of Canadian youth are affected by mental health, illnesses, or disorders. What resources do we have to support people in the community in regards to mental health and addictions for all ages?
Just ask Everett Hindley to address this question. Everett Hindley is our Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, the first time our province has had a minister specifically working on mental health and addictions, as well as our Minister for Seniors and Minister for Rural and Remote Health Care. We're coming off of a $30 million increase with respect to mental health addictions this past year, as well as $30 million the previous year. And I'd ask Everett to speak a little bit to, what has gone in communities and where you see this conversation going in
top of mind for us as government now more so than ever. As the Premier referenced, we've made some significant investments into mental health and addictions over the last number of budget years, record investments, including this year where we've put in $435 million into mental health and addictions, and $57 million of that is specifically towards the addictions piece. That being said, we recognize that there's more work particularly to be done on this issue. We have seen, and the stats point to to it. We've had very, very significant impacts on all of our communities over the past number of months, and partially, I think, because of COVID with respect to overdose deaths in this province across, across Saskatchewan, and also, increased mental health challenges and struggles for people. We've made a number, with respect to some of those investments, we're funding, as an example, and I'll just run through a few of these, 20 new addictions, crystal meth addictions treatment beds in Estevan, plus an additional 10 pre and post-addiction treatment beds there, working on more detox beds in Saskatchewan, adding on a 4th rapid access to addiction medicine clinic in the community of North Battleford. We have 3 other ones in the province already. The Take Home Naloxone kit program has been, we've seen substantive uptake in that particular program. Since that program was initiated in November of 2015, we've had nearly 10,000 of those kits go out, and just in the past 12 months alone, we've seen nearly 5,500 go out. Initiatives, including most recently a number of mental health walk-in clinics across our province and a number of communities. And those, of course, have also had to change how they deliver services because it's more virtual care as opposed to in-person care, and that's presented some challenges. Overall, we recognize that we need to do something, and this isn't just a Saskatchewan issue. This is nationwide. We've seen overdoses and addictions and mental health be a significant challenge for governments across Canada, and for us as a provincial government, we need to do what we can to try and find a way to provide supports to serve to people in this province, to make sure that they have access to those supports, whether it's treatment beds, whether it's the naloxone kits, and there's some other things we're looking at. I've had a number of conversations and discussions with a variety of groups and organizations and individuals across this province, whether they've been involved in mental health and addictions for. I've spoken firsthand with recovering addicts who have been fighting addictions for a large portion of their lives to get their by and large, what we need to do is be able to access, allow people to access these services as quickly and broadly based as possible, no matter what community they live in or what part of this province that they are residing in, and recognizing that we've got some decisions to make as we get ready for the upcoming budget, and we're looking forward to what we can do to help with this particular challenge.
So the next question is regarding the pandemic. Shaming and gossip, along with malicious actions, are being talked about around small towns. The Health Information Privacy Act does protect a person from having to disclose their personal information to outside sources, besides immediate care professionals. The members of town who have had the virus and have come forward have faced public scrutiny for it. How can we support those who have been affected by COVID-19?
Paul, Minister Merriman.
Thanks very much, Premier, and thanks for the question. Unfortunately, the pandemic has brought out the worst in some people and the best in some people, and we've seen the best so many times in our province, people helping other people. When either somebody within a community is faced with difficult times because they have been tested positive for COVID, that's just not acceptable. People should not have to do this. There is no fault of their own that they got COVID. That's why when we just had this question in the discussion earlier of why we weren't identifying specific towns. Because in specific towns, somebody can be identified and either shunned or outcast from the community because they brought COVID into their community, and that's just not fair. But we've also seen the best in Saskatchewan. We've seen people come out and be able to rally around, help out their communities, volunteer, contact tracing. We've seen that time and time again, and I'm very happy. Unfortunately, there has been some extenuating circumstances where people have been called out from their community, and we've had that same issue with our healthcare workers that are trying to do contact tracing. We're not trying to get personal information from anybody. All we're trying to do is find out who we need to touch base to make sure that they're not spreading this virus, which is impacting all corners of our community. Thank you.
So we all look forward to a day when COVID-19 will no longer be a concern. However, it seems very likely that we will continue to experience restrictions and costs that accompany the virus through at least 2021 and perhaps 2022 as well. Because our municipal revenue sharing is based on PST revenue from 2 years prior, we are anticipating a drop in revenue sharing, coming just as municipalities are beginning to emerge financially from COVID-19. Will the province commit to freezing revenue sharing for 2 years at 2020 to 2021 levels to assist this recovery?
Thank you for that question, and it certainly has been an issue that many municipalities have raised with me, whether it's urban or rural. In light of the challenges this pandemic has caused the province and the challenges this pandemic has caused for our economy and what impact that will have. I would, first of all, and I should have mentioned it when there was a question about the municipal roads and urban streets and that, the MEEP funding that we sent out at $150 million would certainly go to addressing some of that. And you know, it was one-time funding with very little strings attached, which was great funding. When you talk about the municipal sharing, revenue sharing, it's 0.75% of the GST, and so what, or the PST, I'm sorry. So what impact will that have? It's a 2-year delay. So what will that impact have in 2 years? We know it's going to be down. I think the finance minister would say that we don't have all the numbers in yet. We're not exactly sure. But what I would say, just from my experience anecdotally, is I've been surprised at how much spending has gone on. More people have stayed in the province and they've been spending their money here. You know, you've looked at real estate, and although that may not be PST, but real estate and so many other industries have done relatively well through this pandemic. So we know the PST is going to be down. That will have an impact in a couple years. To the extent we're not exactly sure. You know, it was $279 million this past fiscal year. It's going to be $275, so just a minor drop in the next fiscal year. That's the highest two amounts that have ever been distributed through municipal revenue sharing. I cannot answer what the budget will look like in 3 years' time. We do know that there is a decrease. But one thing I will say, just to keep in the back of your mind, I remember when municipal revenue sharing wasn't on a formula. It's government, and you know, municipalities had no idea. It was up to the whim of the government at that time as to what they would put into was that predictability was into the future. As if the economy grew, their revenues would grow. And the opposite, though, if the economy shrunk, which we hope it never will, but it has at times, municipalities would share in that as well. So I'm not saying what the decision will be in 2 years' time, but I will give you, for many that are virtually joining in, will know that at the time, the predictability was so very important that as the economy rose, they benefited, and if it slid, they would also take part of that responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister McMorris. So the next question comes from Norma Weber, Mayor, Town of Watson. To Premier Scott Moe, I am on our local Quill Plains Healthcare Foundation, trying to progress with our much-needed new addition and renovation to our Level 4 care home in Watson. Why do you keep changing the portfolios of your ministers? It seems they hardly get acquainted with their roles and then they are moved. Our foundation received status in 2017, and this is for sure our third health minister for rural and remote. Just when we get them familiar with our needs, they are gone. It must be very frustrating for them. I know it certainly is for us.
Just very quickly, I was thinking if there was going to be a change in health, or sorry, in ministers. I wasn't thinking that it would actually be health where that might arise from. Is there some other portfolios where we have changed ministers in a little quicker fashion? But more to the question, and Everett Hindley, our Minister of Seniors and Rural and Remote Health, will have more to add. But more to the question with respect to our commitment to investment in healthcare. I think the commitment that Saskatchewan people have seen, not only in healthcare infrastructure like long-term care homes, and Everett will go through the numbers, but our commitment to the folks that are delivering the service in those facilities that we have across this province has been unparalleled in the history of Saskatchewan. This is a government that has, and I will say remains today and will remain into the future, committed to delivering health care in our communities right across this province, whether that be through primary care clinics, whether that be through access to services in our long-term care facilities, whether that be when we are faced with a global pandemic like we are finding our way through here today, through the testing and contact tracing, and also ultimately the delivery of vaccines, which the plan was released earlier this week. This is a government that will remain committed to providing those healthcare services and to having conversations with communities like Watson, of which I am aware of the status of your facility in Watson, committed to ensuring that we are going to continue to invest in healthcare infrastructure, in particular long-term care infrastructure, which I think in fairness has been highlighted across Canada and around the world amidst this COVID-19 pandemic. So point taken, we're aware of the infrastructure challenges we have across Canada, and more specific to your question, we're actually aware of the infrastructure challenges that you have in Watson as well. So I thank you for the question. Minister Hindley, do you have anything to add with respect to details?
Just very briefly, thanks for the question. I intend to hang on to this portfolio as long as I can. So, but it's up to that guy right there. But and just in all seriousness, just know that the Premier's right. We're well aware of the needs in Watson. You've got a very effective MLA there in Todd Gowdy, who's brought this to my attention previously and does excellent work representing the area. And just prior to I've been fortunate in this role that I've been able to learn from my predecessors, Minister Kading and Minister Ottenbright from York, and the previous two ministers on the rural and remote health file, and they've done both have been very good to me in bringing me up to speed on what some of the current issues are. And just further to the Premier's comments, just with respect to long-term care, we've done 14 long-term care facilities in Saskatchewan. The process right now of constructing a new LTC in Meadow Lake. This current budget year, we've announced funding for the replacement of long-term care homes in Grenfell and the Ronge, and we know that there's a list and it doesn't go away, and it's in all parts of this province. And it's something that's very important for us to make sure that we provide the best possible care we can for the seniors in Saskatchewan. And just note that we do take the concerns very seriously in Watson, and we'll continue to work forward to work on that and move that discussion forward with you folks.
Thank you, Minister Hindley. Lanny Ray Best, Administrator, Town of Watson, SAMA's revaluation, provincial and municipal elections all in the same year can be quite difficult for new councillors and mayors. The amount of information a council must learn to perform the necessities of a revaluation year, and new provincial members learning their roles as well. Can we not change the municipal election year to avoid this? Extend the current term for municipalities this once, and our elections will be offset enough. Elections every 2 years will not fix the issue, and just as a reminder, have gained the learning they require to govern effectively. We risk losing all our experience.
Do you have a comment on that, Don? I'd like it.
Okay. Thank you for the question. That came up during the dialogue session, so it's kind of nice to get a mulligan to maybe get it right this time. No, I didn't. Not that I got it wrong the last time, but it is an issue, and it's an interesting time right now with federal politics, and we're driven a little bit by minority governments, because we're never sure when that minority government may call an election, and we don't want to have, which was going to be the case, and why things changed is that we were going to have 3 elections, a federal election, a provincial election, and a municipal election all at the same time, and that's why we altered that. I've heard lots of lobbying, though, to go back to a fall election, which is in the works, is in the plans, both municipally and provincially. There could be, certainly it could be looked at as offset. When we went from the 3-year term municipally to a 4-year term, that then aligned it with provincial governments' elections, and so there could be some thought put into, and we could certainly look at offsetting that. But we also have to realize that with rural municipalities, they're offset already. So there's always going to be a stacking of elections regardless of what we try and do. Could it be better? Perhaps we can look at that into the future, and we've committed to doing that through the dialogue session, so I'll commit to do it through the Bearpit session.
I would just reiterate what Minister McMorris has said, is there's a lot of moving parts to this conversation. It's not as simple as the provincial election and the municipal elections. And we're fortunate in this province where we at least strive to have set election dates that we are aware of. And that hasn't always been the case in Saskatchewan. And it most certainly wouldn't be the case if we were faced in this province, regardless of the party, if we are at some point in the future faced with a minority government where it would essentially blow up any system that you had in place previous to that. And that's what we're seeing in other areas of Canada, and that's what we're seeing at the federal level right now as well, with a minority federal government that will quite likely go to the polls sometime before the 4-year mark, which is what essentially precipitated our challenge a number of years ago. Was we had the federal, provincial, and municipal elections all lining up in the same realm, and we were trying to find our way through that with as much certainty as we could with the set election dates. So we can continue to that, and I appreciate that. I think that was what I took from his comments. But we also need to understand that you're only a minority government away at some level, federal, provincial, from essentially blowing the lid off whatever system you have and having to sit down and renegotiate it again. So the set election dates, I think, does provide us all some certainty, but I certainly do understand as well and we had a question earlier on the vast amounts of information that at times can face what might be a relatively large amount of new members on any council. So point taken, and conversation that I think will happen.
Great, thank you for that. I would agree there was a little bit of voter confusion. I know when I was knocking on doors and I asked if I could put a sign on someone's lawn, and they said, sure you can, but your competition is just 2 doors down, and that was Minister Tell. I said, oh no, it's not the same. So I would support the conversation. So next question is from Murray Gray, Councillor, Town of Moosomin. This question is for the Health Minister. Councillor Gray is wondering if any consideration has been given to testing for antibodies in order to find out the residents who have had COVID-19 already and were asymptomatic or had the virus and self-isolated. It seems with the slow of the vaccine supply, prioritizing the resident list after the health workers and most vulnerable would be prudent and help in getting life in Saskatchewan back to normal.
Thanks for the question. We have several ways of testing right now for COVID-19. We have our Roy Romano Health or Testing Center that is able to process the tests. We also have point-of-care testing, which we're rolling out across the province right now to make sure that anything within our education system or our corrections facilities, or certainly within our long-term care, to be able to find out as quick as possible. I would encourage anybody that if they are feeling anything symptomatic, that they should get in and get tested as soon as possible. Again, and I'll reiterate this, I talked about it in my earlier discussion, was when the vaccine and when your time comes, please go and get vaccinated for yourself, but also for your loved ones and for your community. But we're continuing looking at all areas of testing just to make sure we can get the test back as soon as possible. And if somebody does get tested, I'd encourage them to go on to My Sask Health Records and sign up for that so they can get their results back at a timely manner.
Mr. Marion. Minister Marion. Okay, so the next question is, our hometowns are responsible for the majority of infrastructure in our province, and the development and maintenance of that infrastructure are major drivers for our economy. Keeping Saskatchewan residents employed and money flowing into the tax coffers, the Municipal Economic Enhancement Program, known as MEEP, was a great boom to municipalities. Its only flaw was its short lifespan. Will government commit to extending MEAP funding for another 2 years to help kickstart the Saskatchewan economy and keep our residents employed?
Go ahead, Don. Go ahead, Mr. Premier. No. The MEAP program was the Municipal Economic Enhancement Program, was a great program. It was a one-time program, though. At the time, it was in light of the shutdown of the economy back in March, April, and the impact that that would have. And so it was to get money out into communities so that they could get projects going in their specific community. It was one-time funding. I've certainly heard a lot from municipalities on how appreciative they were, not only of the funding, but how it flowed so quickly. There were not a lot of strings attached to it, and so it got into the communities and then into infrastructure almost immediately. I can't commit, especially with the Minister of Finance sitting just over here, I can't commit that that will be in the next 2 budgets, not at all. But what I can say is that we're continually working, you know, with the federal government. So much of the infrastructure needs to be tripartite. It needs to be a federal, provincial, and municipal responsibilities, and that's what the ISIP program certainly does. There's also the gas tax program as well as municipal revenue sharing. So those are the 3 streams of funding that are on a continual basis that go to meet so many of those infrastructure needs. I do know, talking to many municipalities, that there's always more wants than there is money with aging infrastructure such as water and sewer, and every community seems to be battling with that. So we are aware of it. We're funding it as much as we possibly can through the programs. The MEAP program was certainly a one-time funding program. And, you know, I'm not so sure you're going to see that again until there's, you know, extenuating circumstances like we saw this past spring. Thank you.
I would just quickly add to that. Don is, or Minister McMorris is exactly right. The Municipal Economic Enhancement Program was, actually we did bring it in, I believe in 2009, at about a $70 million. But when we had discussions this spring about understanding the municipal challenges that were present across this province, we were looking for ways that we could provide funding in very short order so that our municipalities could keep up with their infrastructure plans, so that we could keep you know, as many sectors of our economy active as possible throughout the spring, summer, into the fall and winter. But also how to flow those dollars very, very quickly. And there's a number of ministers that were involved with a number of conversations, and I thank them for that, and I thank you that reached out to those various ministers early in this pandemic. You know, we front-loaded the municipal revenue sharing this year so that municipalities had their money in hand to address any challenges whenever they might arise. We came forward with the Municipal Economic Enhancement Program, unprecedented in this nation, I might say, of $150 million. It is a one-time program. We're not currently considering that program into the future. We were fortunate that we were able to flow that as quickly as we could, because we were having conversations at the First Minister's table from the Council of Federation, of which I was chairing at the time, on a transfer of money from the federal government to the provinces, and a portion of that was a $70 million Safe Restart fund, of which we were able to, because we had supplied the MEAP funding of $150 million, match that with the $70 million from the federal government and flow it as well immediately through to municipalities throughout the province. You add to that our commitment very early in this pandemic to increase our infrastructure spend in the province from $5.5 billion to $7.5 billion, a $2 billion infrastructure stimulus. Over $300 million of that is being allocated to municipalities. Much of that is then being augmented with the ISIP program, or the infrastructure program, to end up to be $600 or maybe $1 billion in infrastructure in communities right across the province. So the point of your question, that there is much need for funding in infrastructure in community after community, we understand that. We're working very hard to flow the ISIP dollars through. The COVID stream was fronted at the front as well, which Minister McMorris had mentioned earlier. The MEAP funding was provided as one-time funding. We front-loaded the revenue sharing dollars to ensure municipalities had it sooner rather than later. We're going to continue to be there to talk with municipalities about the challenges that we have. But specific to the MEAP funding, that was a one-time, I guess two-time now over the course of just over a decade, program that was put in place for what we would all agree are extenuating circumstances this particular year, and what we are very hopeful for is a very strong and robust recovery as we, over the next few months, exit this COVID conversation with mass access to vaccines. Ultimately, Saskatchewan, I'm very bullish about the opportunities we have in this province as we find our way to that recovery. We have exactly what the world needs as they start to rev their global engines.
Thank you, Premier. So next is a video question from Mayor Gerald Albers, City of Lloydminster.
Mayor Gerald Albers, City of Lloydminster. Premier Moe and cabinet members, thank you for joining us here at the convention. My question is very simple and straightforward. Will the Premier and the Cabinet commit to traveling the province of Saskatchewan once the pandemic is over to ensure that we can connect with the new ministers of your newly elected government on a face-to-face personal basis in our hometowns and communities throughout Saskatchewan? We all have issues. Our local MLAs are carrying those messages forward, but it's nothing like having the Cabinet Minister and or the Premier see them firsthand. Would you please make a comment, Premier Moe?
I will make an even more direct answer to that. Yes, and I can't wait. And I know we've talked about this before, Gerald, a little bit unique in Lloydminster being a border city. But across this province, I think I speak for all ministers when we most certainly, at the first opportunity when it's safe to do so, are going to be traveling into your communities and communities right across Saskatchewan, and that most certainly includes Lloydminster. I know we've had discussions about potentially having a cabinet meeting outside of the capital city or Saskatoon where we normally have them. We've done that before, and we may look at that again at some time when it's safe to do so. So thank you for that question, and we look forward to seeing you in Lloydminster and many other communities soon.
Thank you for that. So the next question comes from Peter Vaughan, Councillor, Town of Churchbridge. Property taxes are very unfair. A new business might be trying to expand or just to survive some tough years. They may lose money each year, so must borrow to pay the property taxes. Yet municipalities have limited opportunity to generate new revenues. Federal and provincial governments continue to download and drive up unfair property taxes even higher. Why not give PST rebates to municipalities? Why collect PST on an essential service project such as a new water plant or a new fire truck?
The province has basically only 3 revenue streams in order to pay for healthcare, education, and social safety nets and all of the services that we enjoy as residents of Saskatchewan. And one of them is resource revenue, and we have no control on that. And as you know, that's been in a downturn now for a number of years. The other is transfers from the federal government. We have no control in that either. And the third is taxes. So yes, there is, we pay, interesting, municipalities do pay PST to the provincial government, but we also pay PST to ourselves. So the municipalities benefit from the PST that government pays government through the revenue sharing formula. Where we do, and I don't think you can question our support for our municipal partners because of the revenue sharing formula that we have put in place that is quite high compared to other provinces, and the money that flows to our municipalities in the programs that other ministers have already talked about, in the MEAP program, in the infrastructure programs that we partner with the federal government, as well as municipalities will benefit with the 10% reduction on power usage over this next year, because we felt that it should also be available for municipalities. So we support in many, many, many ways. If we forego some of our revenue streams, then that changes how we can support going forward.
If I could, I'd just add to that. This is a good reminder for all of us, and we've worked with municipalities throughout this COVID, these COVID months, these past months, to do what we can to transition dollars and support municipalities in every way that we can, and support businesses. And there's a long list of supports that we had put in place. I think Jeremy Harrison had listed a few. Donna just mentioned the reduction in power rate, the reduction of the small business tax. This is an important time, though, for us to remember as we exit COVID over the course of the next number of months at every level of government, whether it be federal, provincial, or municipal, that we're all looking for different streams to raise dollars and to get our budgets back into a little better shape than maybe they've been the last number of months. It's important for us to remember there's only one taxpayer. There's only one taxpayer in this province and in this nation, and we need to ensure that we are doing everything we can at our council tables, at our provincial government table, and at our federal government table to write the balance sheets that we have coming through COVID, ensure we are doing everything that we can to support an economic recovery. That's ultimately our path back to a vibrant and growing community and province. But we need to understand that we do so, and we do so with the utmost prudence, and be very, very careful before we start making decisions around raising taxes or having conversations that are in any way impeding the recovery that we all seek. We have lost in this province over 20,000 jobs over the course of the last 11 months. I said this on Monday, and I'll say it again today. We want them back, and we're coming to get them. And we're going to move heaven and earth to ensure that we can provide an opportunity for people and industries to invest here and hire people in our communities and ensure that Saskatchewan is going to be a very strong player in what will be a global economic recovery. We have the food, we have the fuel, we have the fertilizer, and we most certainly have the people. And we're going to be part of this. As the global economy starts to rev its engine, Saskatchewan's going to be part of feeding that global economy, and thus, in doing so, going to support an economic recovery in community after community across this province. And I would ask all of you at your local municipal council tables to have the discussion about how we are going to get those jobs back into our communities.
Thank you, Premier. So the next question comes from Jackie Griffiths, Councillor, Town of Aberdeen. Will the provincial government be sending their support to the federal government for the passing of Bill C-213, an act to enact the Canada Pharmacare Act? This act would not be modelled off the Canada Health Act. This act would be modelled off the Canada Health Act.
Paul, if you would have some comments on Pharmacare. I know I talked with the previous minister often about the Pharmacare program, and I would just first highlight, and this maybe leads back to the previous statement where the parliamentary budget officer has said that a national Pharmacare plan will result in an increase in taxes on Canadian people, and that would include people in the province of Saskatchewan. And I would just add to that, in our province, and we have talked about this openly on our collaborative premiers calls with all 13 premiers across the nation, Saskatchewan has one of the most comprehensive pharmacare plans in place today. We cover more, virtually more than any other province I'm aware of. BC could possibly be a close second, but Saskatchewan has one of the most comprehensive pharmacare packages or drug coverage packages in the nation. It's one that we can be very proud of. And so one of the concerns that we might have with a national plan is that best efforts that are in place already might not be realized, and we may all start at a level playing field where Saskatchewan is far ahead of where other provinces are. So there's a number of nuances, I suppose you would say, to a national pharmacare discussion. Saskatchewan most certainly is part of those discussions, and I would put forward likely the model that the national government could follow in how to put forward a comprehensive drug coverage package on behalf of its citizens at some cost, yes, but at as minimal cost as possible. Paul, anything to add?
Thanks, Premier. You explained it extremely well. We want to make sure that this program that the federal government is rolling out doesn't undermine what we have here in Saskatchewan. We do have an extremely strong program for seniors, for children, we've had over 1,200 new drugs added into our formulary since 2007. We want to make sure that this is going to be the best for the Saskatchewan people. There are some other drug plans across our province with our provincial partners that are not near as strong as we are. So again, conceptually, we support this, but we want to make sure that it's going to be best for you here in Saskatchewan.
So the next question comes from Kevin Favel, councillor from the northern village of Alacrosse. I'm a councillor in historic Alacrosse, the home of rich Métis roots. I'm asking if the government is prepared to assist us to celebrate our 250-year birthday in 6 years' time. I think COVID should be over by then.
Yeah, it'll be close. I suppose probably Don McMorris, would you be aware? I was going to say maybe Don Morgan could answer that. He's likely at the original event, but But maybe we'll ask Don McMorris, as it's likely more in his file.
Thank you, and congratulations to Isle La Crosse. It is a historic community, and it definitely is a milestone to be celebrated. It's not for another 6 years, so for me to commit that we're going to fund any program, again, the finance minister keeps staring at me like, don't be committing to 6 years down the road, let alone next year. But having said that, you know, Saskatchewan has a lot to celebrate, and you know, so many of the communities that have reached milestones in the past put on a big celebration, and as was said, I think this province needs a big celebration coming up over the next number of months as we put this behind us. So much has been put on the back burner for so long, and you know, 11 months seems to be a very, very long time. So we're looking forward to those celebrations kicking off again into the future, and let's have that conversation regarding Isle La Crosse into the future. It is 6 years away, but it is definitely a milestone that needs to be celebrated in this province, and congratulations.
Absolutely, I would extend my congratulations as well, and this is a good time. We have a little bit of time maybe to look at some of the ongoing programs that government does have. I know the Community Initiatives Fund through through Laura Ross, our Minister of our Parks, Culture and Sport, and that would be a good minister to send in an initial request either to Laura Ross or to Don McMorris, and we can go through some of the existing programs that we have for Isle La Crosse in this great celebration, or any other community as well, as they're available to all Saskatchewan communities.
Thank you. So we have a few questions left. I know we are to be finished here in a few minutes, so I'll go just a couple more questions. And please note that if we don't get to your question, that we will make sure that the response is sent to the ministry, and those will be sent out to all of the members. Lanny Ray Best, Administrator, Town of Watson, Saskatchewan Housing Authority Boards. Appointed local board members cannot be related at this time. In small communities, this can make it very difficult to fill a board. As many families are connected in small towns, can we change this rule and allow related members to serve on the same board?
And I'd ask Laurie Carr, Minister of Social Services, to answer that. And Laurie, I'd just say that we started a little late, and we're able to stay a few minutes longer if need be.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that question. I appreciate it. Yeah, our housing authorities are a very unique board right across the entire province. We have hundreds of them. And I think as we move forward, we need to look at ways that we can make these boards successful, and if that is expanding the scope of who can sit on a board and in what capacity, I think that's something that we will look at and we will evaluate as we're moving forward. It's really interesting. This morning I actually had a conversation with one of the city mayors, and his concern was, you know, we're putting money into these housing authority boards and there's no one from city council that has the opportunity to sit on that board. So I actually committed to him to looking at the boards and seeing how they're set up and why they're set up the way they are set up. And this is one more thing that I will add to that review. And as we move forward, we'll see where we go. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Minister Carr. So the next question, Jackie Griffiths, Councillor, Town of Aberdeen. What concrete steps are taken in the areas identified by the seniors mechanism? Things that have been accomplished and shown positive results for the seniors in our province. At the last convention, there has been no progress made. So the question is regarding to the seniors mechanism, support for seniors in our province.
Thanks, Jackie, for the question. I think this one came up in the dialogue session this morning as well. And as I'd commented there, we've had numerous conversations with the organization. I had a chance to speak to the Sask Seniors Mechanism and just have a chat with them earlier this winter to talk about some of their priorities going forward. I believe we do provide some funding through the provincial government to the Sask Seniors Mechanism. About $300,000 is the most recent figure that I'm aware of. That being said, they brought some very good ideas to the table in terms of things that we need to look at as a provincial government for providing supports to seniors and older adults across Saskatchewan. You know, some of the priorities they identified for them were with respect to, you know, affordability issues. Healthcare is always top of mind. Aging in place was something that they had wanted to raise with me directly as the minister, and as I committed to them during our first conversation, I said that this would not be the last, and we'd continue to have discussions with them. And as the minister responsible for seniors, I'll be also having discussions with other groups representatives, representative of seniors and older adults across the province as we try to get some ideas and some suggestions on how we can achieve some of these things, of course, working not only within the provincial government, but also through our federal partners and municipally as well. Each community is different in terms of what they offer for supports and services to senior citizens, and we need to make sure that we take a look at all of those potential options and see where we can go with that in the years ahead. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Minister Henley. Lana Ray, Best Administrator, Town of Watson, could the Elections Act regulations be amended to allow business owners to vote in the municipality where they operate their business? Business owners pay municipal and school taxes in the community and have a right to voice how their business community is managed. Business owners often volunteer, donate, and participate in the municipality, and it is not fair to deny them a vote.
This is kind of reminding me back in the days when I was a health minister having to answer so many questions. Where are all the health questions right now? I kind of thought it was the portfolio, but maybe it's the minister that's the problem. Anyway, regarding municipal, who can vote in municipal elections, and you know, I've heard it before. This has been brought up to me many years ago, actually, in a community that I represent, and it's a resort community, and pretty much all the business owners happen to live outside of that community, and they never had a vote, never get to vote on the town council, or yeah, it would be a town in this situation, on a town council, and the problem is that, just as you identified, they're paying taxes, a lion's share probably of the property taxes in that community, with no vote. I know that municipal affairs or government relations has looked at it before, and you know, there are pros and cons on both sides. There are arguments for why this should be changed, that business owners would have a vote in municipal elections, and there's another side to why that doesn't happen. But I would commit to, let's look at that again. Because there is some inequity to be paying tax without any say in the local governance. And we'll certainly have a look at it, and I can commit to looking at it and coming back to the SUMA board and you know, with maybe a more fulsome explanation as to the direction we're going and if we are entertaining any change. We're not right now, but we'll certainly have another look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister McMorris. There is a video question from Mayor Gerald Albers, City of Lloydminster.
Mayor Gerald Albers, City of Lloydminster. Thank you, Premier Moe and members of the Cabinet, for joining us here at the Municipalities of Saskatchewan Virtual Convention Bearpit session. Potable water and sewer treatment are just two of the major responsibilities we face as municipalities each and every day. Both of these tasks are regulated by either the provincial or federal governments. We have seen ever-increasing regulation requirements being placed upon municipalities to ensure that we're doing it properly and correct. Every municipality, from villages to cities, focus a challenge on funding. How do we deal with these increasing costs? Does the government of Saskatchewan have a long-term plan? And can you share how you plan to help municipalities address the ever-changing regulations facing us to ensure potable, clean water and dealing with our wastewater properly going into the future?
Thank you, Mayor Albers. So again, it really does go back to the infrastructure that we have in the province, the aging infrastructure that we have. And these are not cheap fixes, they're expensive fixes. When you're talking about water treatment plants and wastewater treatment plants, they're quite expensive fixes. You know, just a couple things that come to mind. First of all, I would say on the funding, as I had mentioned earlier, it's really a tripartite. It's a federal, provincial, and municipal obligation. Worked closely with the federal government to try and, when they put a program in place, to allow us to have a little more say as to where that fund is going. Quite often the federal government will put out forward a program, and it will specify which streams that money can flow towards. And it's not always always necessarily the priority of the community. I've heard over and over today, and in the number of months that I've been the minister, that water and sewer are a priority, but when we look at the funding streams that come from the federal government, it doesn't always match that. And so we're going to continue to lobby federal governments, the federal government, to give us more flexibility. The one thing we've heard over and over again was how flexible the MEEP funding was, and we would say yes, but sometimes our hands are tied as to what the funding is going to, as directed by the federal government. The other thing that I would say on infrastructure programs and some of the major issues such as water and wastewater treatment, the communities working together. If can every community in Saskatchewan have their own freshwater and grey water plants? And I mean, that's the way that the province was built. But can we look at doing things a little differently? And in some cases, not always because of distance, but in some cases, communities working together and having a combined wastewater or drinking water plant is things that we need to look at. So cooperation into the future. That was a question that came, or a comment that came in the dialogue session, is when these projects are rated, for example, is there a higher rating if there are communities going together? And the answer is yes. We want to incent that. And so I think that, plus the working with the federal government, goes to address the issue that, Mayor Albers, that you have. But again, we just know that the infrastructure and those expensive pieces of infrastructure are aging in our province. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that does conclude the Bearpit session and the questions that were asked. If you did submit a question and we didn't get to it this morning, our staff will send it to the appropriate. There was only a couple more, but I will say that the ministry will follow up. I want to say thank you to Premier Moe and your cabinet for taking the time this morning to be with us. I know our members appreciate the opportunity to pose the questions, but also I think it's minus 40 out there, and you've taken the time to actually be here together to answer those questions. And I know, Premier Moe, you'd indicated that in your speech on Monday that we are in for some tough times, but I think that we all want to say thank you for your leadership, getting us through a pandemic, but also to Dr. Shahab as well for his leadership in getting us through there. So again, on behalf of the municipalities of Saskatchewan, I just want to say, we want to say thank you from all of our members for the work that you've done, and we are stronger together. Did you want to add anything?
I would just in closing say thank you very much, Lori, and to all the members that have joined us here today. You're right, it's minus 40 out today, and the only good thing about that is it does, in true Saskatchewan fashion, solve the issue that we have with the ultra cold temperatures needed to keep our vaccines frozen. We just put them outside now. And so we've checked off that challenge that we had here, if we could just get some more vaccines. But thank you truly for your words, Lori. We will pass that on to Dr. Shahab. I have a great team that I have the opportunity to work with of Cabinet and caucus, MLAs, and they hear from many of you that are on the line here today, as well as constituents that we collectively serve across the province. And I would just close somewhat where I started, with thanking all of the members of our urban municipal councils across Saskatchewan. You most certainly aren't doing this for the fame and the glory. You aren't doing it for the money. You're doing it because you love your community and you want to improve your community. And for that, I know each of us are forever grateful for the work and the time that you provide in your service. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And back to you, Danny.
Well, Lori, you did a great job moderating that Bearpit, and thanks to all of the participants in that this morning. And that brings us just about to a wrap for our 2021 virtual convention and trade show. Just before we go, we do have a couple of things that we want to touch on. I want to personally thank all of the sponsors And on behalf of Municipalities of Saskatchewan, we want to thank all the sponsors, all of the special guests that we had, and most importantly, you, the delegates, for taking the time and having the patience to sit with us through this first ever virtual gala. For the most part, things went as well as we could have hoped for. Obviously, the odd little technical snag, but everybody was patient in true Saskatchewan fashion. We worked through it together, and proving once again that we are all stronger together, and we're stronger when we just have patience, and that's what it's going to take for all of us as we start to roll out of the COVID-19 pandemic. Just a few things here. The marketplace, I just want to make sure that I've got my information correct. We hope the last 4 days, first of all, have been fruitful for you, and that you've renewed some connections with people, that you had an opportunity to do some networking. We hope the education component has been of value for you, and especially things like this Bearpit that we wrapped up with here today. Let's see. Notes, sessions have ended. Delegates can connect with exhibitors from 12 noon right until 2 o'clock this afternoon. Want to remind the delegates, you'll also be able to browse the trade show booths, view the on-demand sessions, and also watch or rewatch recordings of all the live sessions for the next 30 days on this platform. So keep that in mind. We want to invite delegates, if you'd be so kind, to take a moment to fill out the evaluations, the convention evaluation form. And this is really important because it helps the convention planners make the 2022 convention even that much better and that much stronger. So if you take the time and to fill out that form, we'd really appreciate it. Feedback helps municipalities of Saskatchewan make your convention better. As I said, the link to the evaluation is available on munisask.ca. So once again, the link to the evaluation form, you'll find that at munisask.ca, and it will be sent out as well in Municipal Update. Delegates can also expect to see it directly in their inboxes. So when you see the evaluation form, please take the time to fill that out for us. By submitting the evaluation, you'll also get another chance to win a prize, and that's a bus trip to Manitoba or something. I don't know what the prize is. It'll be a good one. Municipalities of Saskatchewan, we're planning an in-person event. Barring any more COVID situations, we're hoping to meet next year in person for a live event and get things back to normal. Of course, that will all depend on the pandemic and if and when that goes away. Well, it's going to go away. It just depends when. Hotel information for Convention 2022 will be sent out in April, so be sure to watch again your email and the municipal update. My name is Danny Hooper. I've had just an absolute thrill being with you in this virtual platform for the past few days. A new experience for me. I've done just a little bit of virtual work, but this was really a test for all of us, and I learned a lot and had a lot of fun. I want to thank everybody on the back end, Cameron and the whole gang, for Sarah and everybody in the back end, Dory and Katie and everybody else for working tirelessly. And there were many, many sleepless nights over the past few days keeping things up and running. So thanks to them. And I hope I get to see you at the 2022 Municipalities of Saskatchewan Convention and Trade Show. I'm Danny Hooper saying God bless. Please take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon. Bye.